Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Global Conference on Commemorating Past Genocide and Learning to Prevent Atrocity Crimes. The theme of this session is When the State Kills Its Citizen, the case of Somalia military government against the Somaliland people. On this session, we have Mohammed Ahmed Mahmoud and Mohammed Abdullahi Dole from Institute for Peace and Conflict Studies, University of Hargeisa, Somaliland. Please let me know if I have pronounced your name correctly. Now, I request each panel to deliver his speech for 15 minutes. We'll have question answer session at the end. Now, I would like to invite Mohammed Ahmed Mahmoud, who had been working on international and national development programs and has working experience with different UN agencies. He has worked for a long time with civil society sector, institutional developments, governance, peace building, etc. with different organizations. So, may I request Mohammed Ahmed Mahmoud to start his session. Hello, can you hear me? Sir, are you there?
The panelist has to unmute himself. Mohammed, you have to unmute yourself. Can you please unmute yourself?
Hello? Mohammed? The one below. Okay. One tap to unmute can ha. So now can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. And thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this global conference. And first of all, I would like to make some brief about Somaliland case, which is very unique, I think, for the rest of the world, how Somaliland people has faced a lot of problems, oppression, killing, human rights violations. And because of the Somaliland people, they were seeking a unity for whole Somali people. We were seeking, so from seeking unity to genocide. I think that was a history of Somaliland. Somaliland people have been trying to create a greater Somali Republic in the Horn of Africa in 1960. When we joined the Somalia, that was our vision, create the whole Somali people to have one government in the Horn of Africa. So we had ambition, and that ambition did not succeed. And at the historical perspective, I think the Somalilanders has a unique case when it comes to how their ambition failed because of they were thinking about the Somali people after independence or post-independence, Somaliland and Somalia to unite and to have a prosperous country. Unfortunately, that did not succeed. At the historical point of view, first of all, that unity that took place in 1960s, that Somaliland people attempted to have a unity between Somaliland and Somalia has failed. And this failure has consequences as following. First of all, in 1961, Somaliland people or some of the Somaliland military people tried to have a coup. Because of the onset in 1960, the Somalilanders felt that the union between Somaliland and Somalia has failed. So in 1960, immediately, Somalilanders tried to make a coup, and that coup did not succeed. Similarly, in 1961, Somali constitution, there was a referendum with Somali constitution, and that referendum also did not succeed because of the Somaliland people rejected 51% they are not ready to have a unity with Somalia. But the action was politically developing before even Ziad Barre regime. And from that level, immediately the Somalilanders felt that there is no power sharing between Somaliland and Somalia, and there was the area that has been triggered. How Somalilanders felt a disaffection with the union between Somalia and Somaliland, and they politically become alienated, socially, economically. That was developing from time to time since 1969. And then 1969, Ziad Barre coup, Ahmed Ziad Barre coup took place in the Somali Republic, and then the military took over the country in 1969. But from there, everything has been changed, and it seems that everything has, getting worse and worse and worse. So the Somalilanders, and from in that Barre regime, in the earlier years, there were some, and at least welcoming people, expecting that there will be a change, there will be a nationalism, there will be development. After a few years later, the Ziad Barre regime started operating the people, oppressing the people, killing the people, and detention, and politically and socially and economically sectioned and punished the people from Somalia. The people faced a lot of detentions, harassment, a lot of inhuman actions against human rights, against humanity. So the people of Somaliland, they faced a lot of problems in this regime, and many people have been killed, as you, I think, are aware of. And I think Somaliland is one of the Somalian people facing one of the worst scenario, one of the worst situation ever took place in African region, like Rwanda. Because of Somaliland and Rwanda, I think it's the same case. The genocide of Rwanda and genocide took place in Somaliland, same scenario, how it took place. And many people from Somaliland in that level, faced a lot of problems. From this, problems and killing and detention, Somali National Movement was formed to liberate the Somaliland, and that was also escalated a lot. The Ziad Barre regime to continue on killing the people, oppressing the people. And in 1998, that was the worst time, or the worst year, that thousands and thousands of people have been killed. The airplane land in Hargeisa and bombing Hargeisa within same place. And whatever the regime has made to massacre the people, and before even massacring the people, the regime has economically sectioned the people. Because of the people were marginalized, there's no health, there's no education, there's no social services, no roads, the whole people, they have been suffering in that 21 years, and even before the 1998, people have been suffering. They have a lot of problems in the human rights, and against the rights of accessing the education, health, employment, economy, infrastructure, and development. So we have that problem in that long years. And it started in 1998 when Somali National Movement (SNM) entered the main cities of Somaliland to liberate the country. The many people are being killed by the regime, and people had suffered a lot in this year, and many people have fled or left to the country. I think the largest refugees in Africa at that time, around 500,000 people, left to Ethiopia. At that time, Somalilanders were the most refugees, biggest refugees come in Africa, as reports indicated. So I think it was a problem which has the international attention. I believe the Cold War was part of it, because of the Cold War contenders did not care about who's killing or who's not. I think the America or the Western country, they were witnessing how many people or how Somalian people have been killed, how Somalian people have been massacred. We did not get attention from them because of the Cold War or competition between the Western or the communists and capitalists was part of the Ziad regime to stay a long period in the position and in the power of Somalia. It was getting assistance from the United States and militarily, as getting aid from the United States because of the Russia left Somalia in 1974. And then the America came. So since the United States came, because of the Somali Republic was a very strategic place in the Cold War era. And there was a big base in Berbera. And that base was built first of all in Russia and secondly in America. So because of the Somali Republic at that time, located with the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, Indian Ocean, it was a very strategic geopolitical place in the Horn of Africa and Africa in general. That's why the rivalry of the Cold War, fighting one another. And that's why I believe that they had a plan I to talk about, what's going on in Somaliland, how the Somaliland people suffering the regime, how the Somaliland people, face it as such kind of genocide and human rights violations and gross human rights violations, took place in the Somaliland cities. The whole main cities of Somaliland, have been destroyed and looted. So there were a lot of, actions against human rights, like rape, and killing. It was unpredictable what took place in Somaliland. Unfortunately, when we come back to the country and captured it in 1991, those made the crimes against humanity up to now did not get or did not bring them justice, because of the Somalia since today is anarchy, it's chaotic and stateless. So all the criminals wanted to Mogadishu and Somalia, so they were not brought to justice. I think that's unfortunate for Somalilanders, for Somaliland people, but still the criminals who made this crime against humanity are still alive today, and still are some of the places. Some of them they escaped to the country and outside. Some of the Somaliland communities tried, like in America, tried to made the case against those criminals who are left to the country and stay some of the places like United States, and they were trying to present their case, how they violated human rights, how they killed many people from Somaliland. But I think that's unfortunately that human rights organizations did not, make contribution how those criminals will be brought to justice. I think that's what we do from many countries and in Africa or elsewhere, that the criminals are still alive, without bringing it to justice, or without pressure even, and they are not hiding themselves. They are our neighbor in Somalia, still they are alive. So I think the Somalilanders, from that experiences, when we come back to the country, Somaliland people were divided. One was the SM, Somali National Movement, supporting, and one was with some of the were with the governments. But when we come back to the country in 1991, fortunately, we created a brotherhood with all our society in Somaliland. We keep our society of brothers and sisters to forgiveness each other. Up to now, that 10 years, Somaliland, government was trying, Somaliland people, improving the human rights. Because I think we believe we learn lessons from that past 10 years. Somalilanders faced those problems. So I think Somaliland succeeded to have a democratic constitution, a constitution that has, keeps the rights of the citizens. The constitution that has, all adhering to all human rights, all international conventions. But today, Somalilanders are free. Today, Somalilanders have freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. And in when we were in Somali Republic, that years, the last 20 years that Ziad Barre was administering, Somali people, or even Somaliland, they had not that chance and opportunity of freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. And the Siad Barre government, if any group is come together, they were detained. They didn't have any rights of assembly, of freedom of expression, of freedom of speech. And I think now we have opportunity. Somalilanders, and already changed that and history, better history that every Somalilander today has a constitution, they has a constitutional democracy, they has a political pluralism, political parties, a system that ruling party and opposition are, have a more transparency, have a judiciary, independent judiciary, have a parliament. And our experience in Somalia, we didn't have that system, a system that only one person is ruling. Siad Barre regime was only one person. There's no multi-party system. There's no constitution. Even the constitution was, working with under the military system. It was surprising. I think it's remarkable to say that the justice system was under the military. The whole justice system in Somalia since 1969 up to 1991, all judiciary system was under military command. There is no freedom. There is no place you can, bring your case, and there is no independent judiciary system. And I think these are the cases or situations that Somaliland people encountered during that long years of 21 years. So that tyranny, I think, again, started to anarchy. People had dictators, and then later on, everything has become out of control. So I think today, Somalilanders, we have good lessons learned, and I think we can teach many African countries and around the world, how you have good lessons learned, such cruelty and against humanity. When you talk some person here in Somaliland, everybody has recollection or can remember what happened in the past, and you can see a graves in everywhere of the country, and you can see a mass graves. I think it's everywhere of the country, and many people lost their loved ones, their sisters and brothers and fathers, and I think today, fortunately, we succeeded. We celebrated to restore or to regain our sovereignty, our independence. And today, Somaliland is a free country. We teach the rest of Africa. We teach the one of Africa, which mostly dictators are still there in many African countries. As you're aware of, and as many people are aware of, that Africa, has a problem of governance, dictators, and those dictators stay a long time in the power. That's why such kind of action can take place. So I think Somaliland is a classical example. It's an example the rest of the world, the rest of the African countries, while Somaliland is a de facto state, but peaceful, democratic, secure, and I think people have all freedoms, free market, freedom of speech. Everything is free. So I think today, we have. From lessons we learned in that long history, I think today we can make our country, and we did our country, be more democratic country and keep the human rights. So finally, and I think that long history, as I said, taught us, how we now Somalilanders, shaped their future. How we shaped our future, and I think how our future will not back to the history we left. And because of we shaped our future, when we decided dismantle or to draw the union, voluntary union, we entered in 1960. I believe that was the bottom line because of our society, our people, our politicians. We had ambition. As I said before, to have a bigger Somali republic, but that did not succeed. And that was I think the bottom line. And that was, I think, where things started. The Somalilanders be marginalized and to face such problems and such kind of, I think, human rights violations. So, we are calling the international community and the world that Somaliland or Somalilanders, today they have created their own way and their own state. So, no one can talk about, no one can pressure us that failed unity, and that failure of merger between Somaliland and Somalia. Well, we already succeeded our own way. We created a state which is combined with the our traditional system and the modern system. We made things to happen. The way I think that our society, the way our people want it to develop. So I think, and we Somalilanders, I think we made a lot of progress. We made a progress, and we made since we had the referendum in 2001, the constitutional referendum. I think that was to respond that the Somaliland people succeeded to change that arena of dictatorship, of human rights violations, of oppression and killing of the people. And today I think we all celebrate that people are free and have their system, have their political system and political parties, everything we are ruling today. So, and I believe that the international community, the African countries, and the whole world, I think we can teach some because of how we formed this system and how we succeeded, our country without foreign interventions. Somalia is under foreign interventions at 10 years. Well, we succeeded for our own way of developing a country politically, economically, socially, educationally. So I hope that we Somalilanders, we are proud today. We are proud that we are free. We are proud that we succeeded to liberate our country. We are proud that our children today have a freedom, have education, have a peace and security. So thank you very much for, I think my part I did. So my colleague Mohammed, I think will start to more elaborate the points I highlighted. So thank you very much.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hello? Camera, listen. Hello? Extremely sorry for the inconvenience, sir. We are going through some technical difficulties. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, very well, very well.
Okay, thank you, sir. So should we go back to the session now, sir?
Yeah, we can go back. Yeah, to present.
Okay, so I'd like to thank Muhammad Ahmed Mohammed for his presentations. Now, may I please request Muhammad Abdullahi Dole for his presentation. Muhammad Abdullahi Dole has worked with Somalia, Somaliland, and United Kingdom as a development worker for over 16 years. He has written about Somaliland and Somalia politics and is presently engaged as an independent consultant and researcher on a project focusing on the impact of non-recognition of the Somaliland government and its people. Now, I request Muhammad Abdullahi Dole to start his session. Sir, can we have your session, please?
Thank you very much, Cassie. I'm humbled and honored to participate in this wonderful global virtual conference on commemorating past genocides and learning to prevent atrocity. To me, this occasion is important for several reasons. First, we are now witnessing a number of conflicts around the world which has caused or still inflicting atrocity and crimes and human rights violations. And great example is what's happening in northern Ethiopia, Tigray region. The second point, which is also significant for this conference, is for the memory of the young generation who were not born when these genocides happened. My colleague Mohammed has presented very well about the history and how this started. I will be very brief. The union between the British Somaliland and the Trust Treaty of Somaliland, or better known Somalia Italiana, came together into independence. After a few years, 9 years of civilian rule, the military coup happened in 1969, and everything is starting from there. Question is started about the union, and there has been social, economic, and marginalizations. My presentation will base on our archives that has been documented by international human rights organizations and international media. What happened in starting from 1988 and 1989. So I will be very brief. Somali government started a genocidal campaign against the people who lived in northern Somalia at that time, better known like the clan of Izaris, from May 1988 until it was stopped in 1991. According to Alex Duval, who was the co-director of African Watch Committee, direct quote, what began as a counter-insurgency against the SN rebels and their supporters and sympathizers escalated into genocidal onslaught against that group of people. I will specifically focus on two reports. The first report is the African Watch Report Somalia, which was titled A Government at War with Its Own People, published in 1990. In that report, African Watch provided historical background on the cases of the war and human rights violations that took place in different parts of northern regions. The African Watch alleged that the British military response to the Somali national movement was not proportional, even though the former Somali Republic was signatory and ratified the Geneva Convention. However, British government completely ignored the rules of war and the response to the armed opposition and their supporters who were appalling criminal. And let me go through the main points of that report. The report was based on extensive interviews conducted by Africa Watch, where they have interviewed a number of refugees in Djibouti, August 1989. They have also done some interviews in UK, specifically in Wales and England between June and October of the same year. According to African Watch, according to that research, African Watch learned that extrajudicial killing started in 1984 when SNM means the Somali National, it has been African Somali National Movement, which was one of the rebel groups against the government of Ziad Barre in Somalia in the early 1980s. So when that rebel group is better known as SNM force directly attacked the military base of the regime in the north. According to an African Watch direct quote, when there was an encounter between the government force and the SNM took initiative against military adversaries, and the army will conduct a sweep of area where the incident or the attack happened. According to the report, the killing started in 1984. There was a series of massacres committed by the government of Ziad Barre. For example, on 15 October 1984, in the village Gogolwanak near Arabsio, 6 people were executed. On 17 November 1984, mobile military court sentenced 26 Isaac civilians to death in Bokolchere, which is the outside of Hargeisa city with the west side. Of these, 9 were civilians and 17 were SNM fighters. Another major massacre took place in Buro in December 1984, in which 43 innocent men who were the cream of the community of Buro lost their lives as a result of false accusations in the pretext of them being the enemy of the state. This was the first time in the history of that government, of the Somali region, people came out to witness a public execution. The main clash between Siad Barre's government and SNM took place on 27 May up to 31 of May, which SNM rebels attacked in Hargeisa and Bura respectively, or Bura Hargeisa respectively. This attack by SNM forces as they crossed the border from their bases in Ethiopia and entered the main cities in the north region of Somalia, specifically Hargeisa and Bura. The government's response, or Siad's response, was very harsh, for the likes of which the world has never seen before since World War II. The government force directly fired their tax-paying citizens and later called for enforcement for the Somali Air Force to bomb major cities of Somaliland, particularly Hargeisa, Bura, and Berbera. This has led to massive human casualties in which innocent people, including women, children, and elderly people, lost their lives. The African Watch estimated as a result of that cruel air bombardment and artillery shelling, that the deaths of between 50,000 to 16,000 civilians at that time of writing the report. That means between 1988 to 1989. In addition to that, 500 civilians fled the main cities of the north, better known Somaliland, to neighboring countries, particularly Ethiopia and Djibouti. As Ariel highlighted, my presentation is based on the archives which has been documented from that genocide, which the world has never paid attention, despite the fact that what happened is quite similar to what happened in Rwanda and many other places, as my colleague also highlighted. Let me take an article posted in Washington Post on 1st July 1990, titled "The Genocide in the Horn of Africa" by Almani Galite. The article is crucial and very important, as it was written in 1990 by a prominent American newspaper. It basically contends that the regimes in Somalia and Sudan and Ethiopia are horrific, and as bad as the resistance of the African apartheid regime, because they were committing gruesome human rights violations against their own citizens. And to start the main points of the article, which is very interesting, direct quote from the article. Genocide is one of the ugliest words in our language. The deliberate attempt to depopulate is reserved for the likes of Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, Idi Amin. New seats will have to be reserved soon in this gallery of mass murderers for the three of the bloodthirsty dictators in the world: Mengistu Haile Mariam, Omar Hassan al-Bashir in Sudan, and Siad Barre in Somalia. The rationale for these policies of regional depopulation are quite sinister in their racism and religious intolerance. The tactics employed were horrifying. Specifically, the article states, quote, "In Somalia, the Isaac clan is the target of government genocide. The Isaac-based Somali National Movement and its censorship group, headquartered in Ethiopia for years, invaded in Somalia in May 1988, attacking in Somalia in 1988, and now controls a large part of it. The government response has been brutal. An aerial bombing campaign devastated large sections of the cities and productive areas in the north. Wells have been poisoned, villages have been panicked. The civilians have been rounded up and executed by government troops. President Barre has also supplied weapons to Ethiopian refugees inside Somalia and to opposition Ethiopian groups to attack the Isaac civilians." The New York Times titled an article which was written or published on 22 July 1989, "Somalia executes 46 after rioting." On July 17, 1989 was truly shocking day in Somalia when the Barre government regime summarily executed 46 Isaac men at Jazeera Beach. Following the riots, the Barre military juntas, according to witnesses, arrested men, raped women, committed large-scale looting. Later that night of 17 July, African Watch reported that the government arrested around 2,000 individuals. Of those as mentioned above, 46 men from the Isaac community were taken to military court, where they were accused of participating in the riots, and they were found guilty in what could be called a kangaroo court. These men were shot at Jazeera Beach outside of Mogadishu. Furthermore, these men were young and old professionals from all sectors and professions. This is the first time the government executed unarmed civilians from the Isaac community who were not even members of the SNM. This was not the first time. Other major points from that article included the border regime stated that 23 people lost their lives and 59 others were injured in what it called a riot perpetuated troublemakers. According to the New York Times article, African Watch and other credible sources put the number of those killed in the riots around 400 in the urban cities, specifically in the urban cities. For the first time, State Department claimed that African Watch reports and other sources about the gross human rights violations in Mogadishu following the riots were credible. And that was proof of what the international community organizations and other credible media organizations reported, that forgotten genocide. And I would like to emphasize the international community reaction to finding the perpetrators of that genocide. It's very clear that so far the UN failed to set a fact-finding commission to know exactly what happened in the north, now the Republic of Somaliland, during the Siad Barre regime. However, Somaliland government set up a war crimes commission under the Minister of Justice to conduct a research on the number of mass graves and the victims who lost their lives and the violent lawsuit against those who were behind the genocide. This culture of failure to put on trial the perpetrators of war crimes and human rights violations that happen in Somaliland creates a culture of immunity. And it's the right time that the international community, specifically the UN, set up a commission which researches on what happened 31 years ago, 32 years ago. Otherwise, what we will see is that, and it's also very important that that type of genocide will not happen again. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm very pleased again to be part of this fundamental and significant conference on genocide. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, sir. We'll now go to the question and answer session. So we have a question from Muhammad Ahmed Mohammed. The question is, what is the reaction of international community today on Somaliland struggle? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, repeat, please. Hello.
Hello. Should I repeat the question again?
Yes.
What is the reaction of international community today on Somaliland struggle?
Yeah. I think, first of all, the international community now appreciates how Somaliland formed its own state, its democratic system, how Somalia recovered that long, destruction and devastation and genocide and many problems that Somalilanders face, as we said. So I think today the Somalilanders, the international community is partnering with Somaliland to promote its statehood and democratization process. And they did not talk about that previous history of the genocide. And as Mohammed said, that was, I think, the missing elements how the international community did not give time investigate this genocide that took place in Somaliland. But I think today the international community can see that Somaliland has made a remarkable improvement and made a system that will not allow again, the human rights violation to happen in the territory. A system that, armed the people because of the Somaliland and statehood or democratization process owned by the people, and it's not externally driven. It's a locally driven system. And international community sees that Somaliland is a miracle, the Horn of Africa and Africa in general, because of where we came. That Mohammed and me have been discussing that history of destruction, of genocide, and how our society suffered that 10 years, and how I think after 10 years how Somaliland made its own way to such progress and improving the whole infrastructure and education and political system, governance, rule of law. I think this is what the international community today sees a much more importance for Somalilanders to to make lessons learned from that long period. And I think today Somaliland is a role model, and a model that many African countries and the entire world can see Somaliland a viable state, a true democracy that it is people and only its people. Because of the democracy we have today is where the power is transferred peacefully. We have had many elections where all post elections were peaceful and power transfer peaceful. And I think it's rare in African countries. It's rare in African countries that such power transfer and such elections end more peaceful. And international community see that Somaliland, which is located a very strategic place in the Horn of Africa, is more, and promoting democracy, regional economic integration, human rights, the rights of the marginalized people like women, disability, and others. So I hope that Somaliland deserves the international community. One of them see that Somaliland deserves to be recognized, where Somaliland has already fulfilled all statehood criteria. So we hope that Somaliland will continue in such path of democracy, such path of peacefulness, and we hope that sooner or later Somaliland will be member of the United Nations, because of today we see that self-determination we made is our rights. We have right to be a state. We have our own rights. Somaliland was a state, an independent state before 1960. We have our own borders. We have everything. But there is no, I think, way to delay Somalia to be recognized in any country of the world. And this is part of the human rights we have been talking about. This is the rights, I think, we need the international human rights organizations to advocate. The people of Somaliland opted to be independent country, and they have their own rights. As the United Nations Charter says, self-determination, civil and political rights. There are a lot of international instruments talking about people to have a right in their own self-determination. So Somaliland people made that, and I think we need the international community and everyone to support that, and independency and sovereignty of Somaliland contribute to the region and the world and the entire world, because of the security and fight against terrorism, piracy, so many other actions taking place in the region, and Somaliland is preventing those actions to spread in the region and entire world. So I think Somaliland has a big partner to the international community and entire world, how we have a contribution and more meaningful participation in issues around the region.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very detailed answer. Now we have a question for Muhammad Abdullahi Dual. So, what steps has the civil society been taking in terms of the documentation process?
Thank you very much, Rabia. I think, as I've already highlighted in my presentation, the United Nations, specifically the international community in the United Nations, specifically the United Nations, has failed to set up a fact-finding mission and to find exactly what happened between 1988 and 1999, or in other words, what happened, the atrocities and human rights violations happening. But fortunately, the Somaliland government has established a War Crimes Commission, what they call, and under the Minister of Justice. So what we have been seeing for the last 20 years, there has been a cooperation between the civil society and that commission, and there has been some of very important documentations. However, I have to admit that there hasn't been a very strong collaboration in terms of how to go forward and find and try to pressure the other UN organizations, how to put on trial the perpetrators who did these heinous crimes. And the irony is that many of the perpetrators are on the run and now staying in Somalia, the neighboring country of Somaliland, and some of them are very close to the current government of Somalia. What's very important now is that there should be a very coordinated coordination between the government of Somaliland and civil society, so that they can be put on trial, those people. Because what happened in different, for example, instances that like the former vice president of Somalia, General Samatra, was put on trial in the United States. And that effort has been cooperated and has been pushed by the Somalian community, in civil society community in the United States. And I think and I hope that similar instances, similar actions can be taken to put on trial and justice to the perpetrators. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, sir. And with this, we're running out of time, and so we have to conclude today's session. So thank you very much, both of you, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Rubeya, for your wonderful moderating, and it has been a great pleasure and honor to be on this conference.
Thank you.